Welcome back, fellow fear seekers, to Night Shift Nightmares. Tonight, we're not just telling stories, we're pulling back the sterile curtain on the very places designed to heal, only to reveal the horrors that refuse to leave. Imagine this, the hushed, almost imperceptible whispers echoing in an operating room as a life hangs in the balance. That unmistakable putrid smell that clings to the air near the morgue, a scent of something beyond death. And the slow, deliberate drag of footsteps down an empty, desolate hospital corridor, footsteps that shouldn't exist. These aren't just tales passed among night staff. These are true accounts from the darkest hours of hospitals, moments that twist the mind and leave an indelible mark on the soul. Are you ready to face what truly lingers in the shadows of the healing halls? Story 1. An anesthesiologist's nightmare. This is Grace Memorial Hospital, a huge old building in the heart of the city, right in the center. For years, I worked here as an anesthesiologist, Dr. Eleanor Vance. I've performed more surgeries than you can count. I've saved countless lives. I've had countless near-death experiences. I've been in the middle of all these incredible events. But nothing could have prepared me for the horror of that night. That night, everything changed. That night, I realized that the operating room was not just an operating room. It was also a dark tunnel, a tunnel to something unknown. It was nighttime. A storm was raging outside. The corridors were empty. Only the occasional sound of shoes and slippers or the squeak of a wheelchair broke the silence. That night, I was called in for emergency heart surgery. The patient was a young man, David. As usual, I made my preparations meticulously. I gave the anesthesia, the monitors were stable, his breathing was quite regular. Everything was fine until that terrible moment. While the surgical team was focused on their work, something strange happened inside me. First, a slight coldness, as if someone had passed by me. But there was no one else in the operating room but my team and me. Then from the supply cabinet in the corner of the room, I heard this strange sound so low that it was almost inaudible but echoing in my brain. A high-pitched whisper. For a moment, I couldn't make sense of it. For a moment, I attributed it to the exhaustion of the day. Maybe it was a hallucination caused by lack of sleep. But the tiny whispers that seemed to be traveling inside my ear continued without stopping, more distinct, clearer, as if someone was talking to me from under the operating table. When I turned my eyes to the monitor, David's heart rate suddenly spiked. The green lines on the monitor began to dance up and down, hard and frantic. The team panicked. Everyone seemed out of control, momentarily forgetting what they were supposed to do. "Dr. Vance, the patient is waking up," Nurse Sarah yelled. I quickly adjusted the dosage, but it wasn't working. David's eyes were half open, staring at the ceiling in terror. His pupils dilated, staring at his focal point. It was as if he was seeing something invisible. Then came the smell that filled the room. The smell of bitter, pungent, burnt meat. It was nauseating. As I tried to figure out where it was coming from, I noticed the lamp on the operating table flickering. Then it suddenly went out. The whole room was plunged into darkness, with only the pale green lights of the monitors and the emergency lights providing dim illumination. Just then, I heard the creak of the door of the supply closet in the corner, although no one opened or closed it. In the darkness, the whispers grew louder. Voices joined together like a chorus, but this time, the whispers repeated David's name. "David, David," echoed through the room, and at that moment, I heard the sound coming out of David's mouth. It wasn't his voice. It was deeper, more muffled, as if there was someone inside him speaking for him, and two separate entities were speaking at the same time. "Let me go. He's coming here." I froze. The team was as shocked as I was. If I had experienced everything alone at the time, probably no one would have believed me. Everyone in the team was holding on to each other, waiting with fear and curiosity to see what would happen. I could hear the shaky breath coming over the operating table, and the smell of burnt flesh filled the room. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I put a trembling hand to David's forehead. It was like ice, but his breathing continued to become erratic. Everything was slowly going from bad to worse. Suddenly, the ice-colored door to the operating room creaked open slowly. I softly directed my eyes towards the door. No one was there. But that door was wide open, and through it, that sharp, cold wave of air came in. I noticed a shadow stretching out from behind the door, a long, thin shadow approaching us from the depths of the corridor. My heart began to pound. This was not a hallucination. This was real. The whole team was staring at me, and I was just staring at the shadow. As the shadow approached the operating table, David's body began to convulse. His eyes were bloodshot. It was as if something inside was trying to take him over. "Save me," David growled, but this time his voice was completely different. It sounded like the growl of an animal. Sarah screamed. The other team members recoiled in terror. At that moment, the shadow leaned over David. We didn't know if it was going to get inside him or if it wanted to take something from him. We were all just watching the whole thing like we were being sucked out of our souls. And that's when I heard the scream that came out of David's mouth. The most horrible, painful scream a human being can make. The monitors went silent, a straight line. All you hear is a high-pitched sound in the silence, the sound of the monitors. After that night, we couldn't save David. The official record said heart failure, which wasn't true, but I knew. The truth was completely different in my eyes. That shadow had taken him. It had taken his soul out of that operating room. The operating room was never the same for me again. Every flicker of light, every faint sound, I remember that night. Everyone blamed it on lack of sleep, stress, fatigue, but I, Dr. Eleanor Vance, felt the reality of that night in every cell of my being. Those whispers, that smell, that shadow. Do you think it's just diseases that lurk in these operating rooms? Or is there something else? Have you experienced something similar? Share it with me in the comments. Story 2. The Terror of the Newly Discharged Patient. I'm Michael. All my life, for reasons I don't know, I've always loved hospitals. People think of a hospital as a grave, but I didn't see it that way. You know, a place of healing, a place of hope. I had been in St. Jude's Hospital for a few weeks because of a car accident last month. The fracture in my back was healing and my wounds were slowly closing. Today, I was to be discharged. It was early in the morning, and as I sat in my room watching the sunrise shining through the curtains, I dreamed that I would finally be free of these four walls. But St. Jude had one last surprise for me, perhaps the last whisper. Nurse Emma came to my room for her morning routine checkup. She had let her blonde hair down as usual, and her smiling face was like a second sun. "Good morning, Michael," she said. "Big day today, isn't it?" I smiled. "Absolutely," I replied. "I'm finally going home." He took my blood pressure, checked my pulse. Everything was fine. "Dr. Miller will be back soon to do a final check and we'll start the discharge process," she said. After Emma left, I was left alone in the room. As I looked out the window, I heard a strange sound coming from the hallway. It was the sound of shoes or slippers clacking against each other, but it was more like someone being dragged. It was very heavy. At first, I thought it was other patients or staff, but as the sound got closer, I felt something strange. It was very slow, like a silent spirit walking. My door opened slightly with little creaks, but no one was in sight. I slowly looked at the ajar door. No one was there. I squinted. Did I see a shadow, or was it just a trick of the light? A chill mixed with fear ran through me. The air suddenly turned cold. A pungent medicinal smell filled the room, but it was different from the normal hospital smell. It was older, more putrid. I tried to get out of bed, but the pain in my back stopped me. I took a deep breath. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, I had been here for weeks, and both my body and brain were tired. But at that moment, rattling started coming from the closet inside the room. It was very faint, as if something inside was moving left and right. The closet door was ajar. It was dark inside. As the rattling continued, I held my breath. I began to feel my heart pumping blood rapidly through my body. A silent heaviness fell over the room. I felt as if someone was standing next to me, staring at me. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I turned my head heavily to my right and looked in the closet. I saw something glowing in the darkness, a pale greenish light. It was flickering, and then there was the sound, a moan. It was very deep, not human. It sounded as if it came from the wheezing throat of an animal. My whole body locked up. I couldn't move. I just focused on the sound. Involuntarily, my body reacted with fear, and rightly so. The moan suddenly turned into a scream, a painful scream that scratched my eardrums. It was as if a soul inside the closet was being tormented, and as the screaming continued, the cabinet door slammed shut. It slammed so hard that the whole hospital must have heard it. Then suddenly, there was silence in the room. But this silence was even more frightening. Then a shadow appeared at the end of my bed, at my feet. I looked down at my fingertips. It was transparent, but its shape was a little clear. It was predictable, a tall, thin figure. On his head was an old nurse's hat, but no face, just emptiness. But it was like a dark void, and in his hand he was holding something sharp, a surgical instrument. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. I couldn't open my mouth. It was as if someone else had grabbed my chin with both hands and covered my mouth. I could do nothing but stare in fear and horror. The shadow slowly leaned towards me, from my upper chest to my neck. I felt a cold breath on my face, and in that moment, I saw the tool in the shadow's hand glowing. I closed my eyes as tightly as I could. I heard a sound, a click, as if someone was dropping something metal on the floor. Then the air in the room warmed up again. The pungent smell dissipated. I slowly opened my eyes. The shadow was gone. The room was empty. The closet door was closed. Everything looked normal. But there was a rusty old scalpel on the floor next to my bed, and underneath it, a blood-stained rag. For a moment, when I felt death at my neck and thought it was grabbing me, everything suddenly stopped. What had happened? I was discharged that day, but that scalpel and the blood-stained piece of cloth haunt me. The hospital staff interpreted it as just an old tool and an accident. But I know that shadow gave me a message. Within the walls of St. Jude's Hospital were not only unhealed bodies, but also unhealed souls. This was seen by people as a joke that I had made up in my mind, a joke that I had invented in my head to get attention. But a former resident of St. Jude's wanted to say goodbye to me. I could feel it. If I hadn't really heard that click, do you think I would have faced death? Do you think this is really a scenario that I made up in my mind? I look forward to your comments. Story 3. The kitchen staff's fear. Hello, horror fans. I'm David. I've been working in the kitchen of a city hospital for years. Just like our name, Night Shift Nightmares. I have nightmares at night. Usually my job is simple. I prepare the food, fill the plates, and serve it to the night shift staff and emergency patients. The hospital kitchen is usually a quiet, work-oriented place. But for me, that kitchen became a place that hid whispers and shadows within its walls. That night, I was alone in the kitchen. All the other staff had left early. It was just me, the rustle of the ovens and the hum of the refrigerator. I was going over in my mind what I had to do the next day and all the plans, a kind of preparation. It was cold, a light snow was falling outside. The routine hospital sounds coming from the corridor made the silence of this dim kitchen even more pronounced. The hospital was of old construction, but the kitchen was one of the oldest parts of the hospital. It had a strange atmosphere, an eerie atmosphere. I had just started to make fresh soup, one of my plans for the next day, when I heard a noise from the back of the door, a slight rattling, as if someone was scratching at the door. At first, I thought a cat had gotten into the old building. I looked up, but no one was there. I called out, "Hello?" There was no answer. I shrugged my shoulders, thinking it was obviously a cat, or maybe it was a noise from inside. I went back to work, not caring, but the rattling continued, more distinct, more rhythmic, as if someone was tapping their finger on the door. This time it was coming from deeper in the kitchen, where the storage room was. Goosebumps ran up my spine. No one was supposed to be there. The storage room was locked. I moved slowly towards the storage room, my footsteps echoing on the cold stone floor of the kitchen. My heart was pounding like crazy in my chest. As I got closer to the door, the rattling stopped, but this time, I heard a whisper from inside the warehouse. It was so low I couldn't make out what it was, but it was a woman's voice. A chill ran through me. For a moment, I thought of turning back. It wasn't my job, but curiosity got the better of me. I slowly opened the warehouse door. It was dark inside. I reached out and turned on the light. The bulb flickered, then began to emit a steady light. The warehouse was empty. There were only shelves and food supplies. At that moment, a shadow passed behind one of the shelves. It was very fast. I almost caught it out of the corner of my eye. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice was shaking. There was no answer. At that moment, the kitchen door slammed. I let out a scream. I turned around. The door was closed all the way. At that moment, a sharp scream echoed through the warehouse. It was a woman's voice, and right behind it, a strangled growl. My whole body froze. I tried to understand where it was coming from. At that moment, a hand reached out from a sack of flour next to me. Long, pale fingers. The nails were long and blackened. The moment I saw that hand, I froze. The hand slowly reached out towards me. It was as if it was trying to hold me. I screamed and backed away. I rushed out of the warehouse and ran to the kitchen door. I unlocked it and ran out. In the hallway, I took a deep breath to feel safe. But just then, the smell from the kitchen hit me. The smell of burnt meat. It was nauseating, like something was burning inside. I ran to the nurse on duty and explained the situation. Sarah said, "David, are you okay?" There was no one there, just you. But I knew there was something there, a spirit that had worked in this kitchen before me. Since that day, I've been afraid to go into the kitchen alone at night. Every click, every whisper, I remember that hand and that smell. Some people think it's exhaustion, that I'm dreaming, but I know the walls of hospitals hold the memories, not only of the living, but also of the dead. Who do you think this woman was? Did anyone else experience something similar in the hospital, or was it just a figment of my imagination? Share with me in the comments.